All right, today we're going to be covering lesson 38-1, which is probability of a single event. We are going to be splitting this lesson into two separate chunks. The first chunk will cover questions 1 to 3, and the second chunk will cover 9 to 10. Question number 1 starts off by saying, suppose that you have a cube with faces numbered 1 through 6. You will roll the cube 60 times. On roughly how many rolls would you expect to get a result that is an even number? On roughly how many of the rolls would you expect to get a 5? And on roughly how many of the rolls would you expect to get a number that is 5 or more? So again, we're rolling this 60 times, right? And if you recall a die, we have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So how many times out of 60 rolls do I think it's going to land on even? Now, let's recap that even numbers are 2, 4, and 6, right? Well, I could possibly roll this 2 about 10 times. I could possibly roll a 4 about 10 times. And the 6 about 10 times, because you have to think that they have an equal opportunity of getting rolled. So I would say about 30 times. Roughly how many of the rolls would you expect to get that 5? Well, I only have one 5 on the die, right? And each one of them probably has about a 10 chance of getting rolled. So I would say about 10 times. All right, and last, roughly how many of the rolls would we expect to get a number that is 5 or more? Now, 5 or more includes both 5 and 6. So this one would be about 20. Let's take a look at number 2. When we roll the cube as described in item 1, we expect it to get an even number about half of the time. Another way of saying this is that when you roll the cube, the probability of getting an even number is 1/2. To write this using probability notation, we do probability of even equals 1/2. So we always write it with the P representing probability and whatever we expect our outcome to be in the parentheses. Letter A, sorry. When you roll the cube, what is the probability that you get a 5? Write your answer using probability notation. So we're going to do probability of getting a 5 equals, well, how many sides are there on the cube? 6. So that's my denominator. How many 5s are on the cube? 1. That's my numerator. Outcome over total. B, when you roll the cube, what is the probability that you get a number that is 5 or more, and write your answer using probability notation. So probability of 5 or more is equal to, well, how many numbers are 5 or more on that cube? 2, right? And how many sides were there? 6. Now, we always want to reduce this to simplest form, so we would actually simplify that to 1/3. All right, I'm going to move to question 3. Here's where it gets kind of lengthy. All right, it says, rolling the cube is an example of a probability experiment. A result of a probability experiment is called an outcome. For the cube, the possible outcomes are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The set of all possible outcomes is called the sample space. Here, the sample space is open your brace, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, close your brace. Getting an even number when you roll the cube is an example of an event. To get an even number, you have to roll a 2, a 4, or a 6. There are 3 outcomes that are even out of a total of 6 outcomes. In the long run, 3 out of 6, or 1/2 of the rolls of the cube, will result in an even number. To generalize, if all the outcomes of the sample space are equally likely, then the probability of an event is given by this formula. Probability of event equals the number of outcomes over the number of outcomes of the event over the number of outcomes in the sample space, so the total. Let's take a look at three states. A regular solid is constructed with 4 faces. The faces are numbered 1 through 4, and the 4 outcomes are equally likely. We will roll this object once. What is the sample space for this probability experiment? So remember, when we do our sample space, this is where we need to put it in a set notation. And on this, we can either roll a 1, we can roll a 2, we can roll a 3, or we can roll a 4 because it only had 4 sides. It says, find the probability that the roll results in the following. Use probability notation in your answers. What is the probability of rolling a 2? So we're going to do probability of 2 equals, well, how many 2's were there? 1. How many sides were there? 4. So 1/4. All right. Probability that a number that is at least 2. So what that means is at least 2 means it could be 2, it could be 3, or it could be 4. At least 2 includes 2. Okay. So that would be 1, 2, 3 out of 4. Number 3, or part 3, a number greater than 4. Number greater than 4. How many numbers on this cube are bigger than 4? None. So we would say 0 out of 4, which is 0. What about a number greater than 0? Probability greater than 0. Well, that could be 1, that could be 2, that could be 3, that could be 4. So this is a 4 out of 4 probability, which is simplified to 1. Before we move on, I want to talk about the next page, and there's this picture, okay? And the picture says the following. If an event can never happen, then there are no outcomes in the event. And so the probability of the event is 0. If the event is sure to happen, then every element of the sample space is in the event. And so the probability of the event is 1. The probability of any event is a number between 0 and 1. How large the probability is tells us how likely the event is to occur. Usually we write these as either fractions, decimals, or percentages. On to your debriefing question.